because like I was looking at the schema. Oh wait, when can I get rid of that? There doesn't seem to be a direct way to go straight for the list of addresses where assets currently live. So one way I could think of to do it was to look at transactions that had a given token in the output. And this works. But can you think of any other ways to do this? My goal is to have a list of asset holders.
Right. I think that's the really good way to do it. Yeah, I couldn't think of any other one. Yeah.
And I would want to filter these because really, yeah, this gives me, and I don't have to include all of this. But no, I would want to filter out, because then in the result, right, I can see, well, okay, this address did get that. This is the same address. Yeah. Anyway, something to play with. Koios does have a direct query for just getting asset address list, but I don't know how it works. I want to know how this query is written. I haven't looked at that yet. So anyway, this will be an example query in the initial version of the course template. Here's the raw result of. I haven't formatted that GraphQL query yet that I was just showing you, but it's ready.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Nelson, Sam, Trevin, what's going on? Welcome, guys.
Good morning. Thanks.
Hey, Curtis.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Top of the morning. What's everybody thinking about today?
I've been thinking how slow my old MacBook is. Oh, that's okay. It's a MacBook from 2014, I guess.
The startup sound just hasn't changed at all, huh? It sounds exactly the same to me.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Right. It's a Thursday. Gosh. Cardano 360 day. Fun day. It'll be good to hear the latest on Vassal and what people are excited about there. So people still showing up. My agenda for today was to finish building that transaction that we started with yesterday, but also just to start with Q&A as always. Hey, Roberto, Lucas, what's going on, guys? Hey, hey. So yeah, we can get into transaction building, and that's the kind of demo that I'm happy to do a couple of times as we work with different people at this step in the process. But I think it could be a really nice thing to look at right now. But before I do, anybody have questions, I think a lot of people here have conquered the environment setup, but any ongoing questions about those steps or the new module this week?
I almost have everything working now. I'm just wondering, the testnet is taking a while to like take 100% sync, right? It takes like a long while. I've left it overnight and it's still syncing.
Did you upgrade to node version 135.2?
I'm not sure. I think so because I need to check. I should check that.
Double check that. That was a surprising change. So a couple mornings ago, I woke up and saw that somebody was struggling with that and then realized it wasn't working for me either. So I had to upgrade and then it worked fine.
What version are we on?
1.35.2 just came out. Yeah, so even it's crazy, right? We started this course, we made a video, wrote some documentation around 135.0, and it's already out of date. That's how things move.
So what's the process now? Should I just download it again, or do I need to go through the whole thing? And it might be easier to just delete the old one.
Let's actually, and this is developing in real time as well. Let me pull up the Cardano node docs, because when I looked at this earlier this week, and I have an old Mac laptop that I like just downloading the executable, right? I don't have to go through the steps of building it. But yeah, look, the current build is still 135.0. So in order for me to sync up with testnet on the computer that I've been using to make a bunch of videos for this course, I would actually have to build from source, where I haven't done that before. And I don't even think I have Cabal installed. I must, because I have Plutus installed. But my point is, the binaries are not updated yet. While if you go into the building from source code right here, this is the link. And then follow these docs right here. This will, if you look at the latest version, does it say it down here?
I just about the tagging thing.
Yeah, exactly, right.
No.
So these docs don't have to change every time, but it's up to us to look for the latest tagged version. And if you do, check out 135.2 right here, and then follow the rest of the steps. In my experience, that does work.
Yeah, I went through that last night. So as long as you do git fetch all on your local repository, it will get the new tag into your repository, and then you can actually do git tag to list it, but you will have 135.2 there.
Yeah.
And then you should just check out tags /135.2, and then
Build it.
you can skip the with compile, because probably you've done that already, and just do Cabal build all on that one. It's going to take a while. One thing that caught me as well was that I ignored the next step that says copy the executables to local bin.
Yeah.
The way for me is not that specific folder. I documented this on Discord, so I'm not using that exact folder, but the folder that you do have in the path of your system, you want to copy you want to run those two CP instructions to update that. Because what I did was I did all the build, but then I was still running the same executables, and it took me a while. When you actually run the command to start the node, you will notice there that it says the version that it's starting. So it took me a while to find out that although I rebuilt it, I was still running the same 135.0 executable.
Okay, so it's always good to check when you first start it to see what version you're running.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
Cardano CLI./version.
All right. Okay, I'll get on it. Thank you.
Cheers.
Anybody else have those questions? So what we were just talking about there is that there was a breaking change to testnet, and if you're trying to sync your testnet node, you might find that it gets to like 99.9% and then holds up there. And if you're having that experience, you do have to upgrade your Cardano node to 1.35.2. Any other questions about getting node running?
I have a question, James. So in the past, I installed from source, and all I had to do was just add the path to Cardano node to my path variable. And then I used in my bash RC file, I kind of added that Cardano path variable to the path variable so it would load in my session. And that was working for me. But this time I actually did have to execute the copy to my local bin folder for it to work. It just wouldn't find it unless I did that. What's the difference? Why? I mean, I thought just adding it to path variable would have worked.
Let's just go look at what this script actually does, because I'm not sure if there's some extra steps it's taking. So scripts. Huh? Is that the one I was just looking at? Impact. So what is this saying? I'm not really sure what this script is doing. It's just checking that. Is it just checking that those executables exist? And then if so, copying them to here. What does the -p do on copy? Anybody know what that -p does on copy?
I thought it was something about parent, like, yeah. Thought it meant like parent directory or something.
In any case, yeah, Curtis, I'm not sure. I can't think of a reason why it would work to add that directory to your path one time and not another, unless it's that maybe the old version still exists and is taking precedence.
Yeah, I wondered that. It does. I verified my path variable included the old one, but I kind of used this as an exercise for me. And I thought that the path variable is addressed in a hierarchical model. So the first path that finds it, it uses it instead of progressing through the path variable to look in additional. That's kind of what I thought how it behaved. So I assumed even though I have it in multiple locations, it still couldn't find it, or at least it said, you know, Cardano node not found.
Yeah.
But as soon as I did the CP command, it actually worked. I thought that would work by not including it in my local bin. And I thought it didn't necessarily matter that it was in there multiple times, as long as I prepended the one I wanted to use.
Guys, just to jump in, I'm looking at the manual for copy in Linux, and the switch P is for preserving timestamps and ownership.
Okay.
Yeah, you have it in the chat. I dropped it in there too.
All right.
So I think this paths sh file just really just routes something to give you the right executable, right?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's right. It's grabbing that path
Whatever argument it receives,
from
it
a
looks for that.
cabal
Right.
plan. Okay. All right. In any case, it is important to know I'm in the same boat as Lucas. I don't use this path for these files. So just keep in mind this right here, this is arbitrary, right? You can make a new directory and add it to your path and then use that one, or you can be aware of where these executables are and use that directory right here. Both of those options should work.
By the way, something just sharing curiosity is for me with version 1.35.0, it always was replaying all the blocks every time I restarted my node. And now for the first time with 1.35.2, it's recuperating it from the snapshot, I think.
Okay.
So it's really a lot more efficient now, where just if I restart it, it just reloads things and just starts getting new tips, new chain extend.
Good. Good.
Is that due to the way it was exited? Because that's kind of been my experience. Is it almost depends on how it was exited the
No,
previous time.
I always did Control C, and now I actually Googled a bit and looked for it, and it literally told me that even there's a snapshot parameter, that it does a snapshot every 70 something minutes. And so I really noticed that as long as you let it running now and let it take a couple of snapshots, it's recuperating it, it's reloading it from the snapshots, but it never did it for me with 1.35.0. So I think it had to do with the version a bit. And by the way, another thing that I Googled and found is that even in the Discord by IOHK for SPOs, someone really published that they were deprecating version 1.35.0 and 1.35.1 because they were a bit clunky.
Mhm.
I don't know if you were aware of this.
Yeah.
I've heard but haven't tried that 134.0 will still sync.
Yeah,
But I
that's
can't,
what they have on mainnet, no?
Only for testnet, right?
I don't, does it work on testnet? I'm actually not sure. Haven't tried.
Yeah.
I thought it was only for testnet.
Okay. All right.
By the way, Juan, how's it going with your i9 and virtualization? Did you get it to run?
No, I haven't. I haven't been able to
Okay.
to play with it. I have to uninstall it, the virtual machine that I'm not and all the machines that I had on the virtual machine, and start from zero. But I've been looking for the space to do it. I'll do that today. I mean tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the day.
Keep in touch.
Thanks for
If
asking.
you need something. I have some notes. Maybe if you're gonna build from sources, which is my way, the way I'm doing it, I may share some notes with you to help you through.
That will be awesome. Thank you, Lucas.
Cool. Cheers.
Great.
So I was hoping that we could do a live demo today. I started building a big multi-asset or multi-output transaction yesterday, but we ran out of time. Any objections to jumping into that demo, or does anybody else have questions about environment setup that you want to touch on before we go?
Happy to jump.
Let's go for it.
Cool, let's play. And as always, just stop me if you have questions here. My goal is to put some stuff up here that makes us wonder. Yes. Okay. I'm going to jump back and forth between the terminal and just a text editor where I'm drafting this transaction. But my goal is to send one of these PPBL summer 2022 tokens that was minted in module 201. I'd like to send one of these to everybody who shared their address in the course so that you can start playing with this on the front end template when those lessons go live next week. Now, since yesterday, I sent 15 more of these to the testnet wallet that I have going here. So I built the testnet wallet in the 102 module. I've been using that wallet since then. It's got some test ADA in it, some other tokens I've minted. But what I'm most interested in are these ones, this policy ID and this token name right here. And these, once again, are the PPBL Summer 2022 tokens that I minted in Game Changer Wallet. I have a whole long list of outputs. So these are all the addresses that people submitted for assignment number 100.1. And so I could just take these, I can copy and paste this entire block right here just into the terminal. And then each of these variables, rec1, rec2, down the list, will be saved and accessible if I run, for example, a transaction build like this.
Hey, James.
Yeah.
Yeah, why isn't the addresses of the same length? Like I see the last ones have a short length.
Good, very good. Every one of these longer addresses has staking credentials associated with it, and the shorter ones do not. So when you run Cardano CLI address build, you can build an address with just a payment V key, and you'll get a shorter address like this. Or you could build an address with both the payment V key and the staking V key, and you'll get these longer addresses. And standard in most wallets, you're going to see any of the browser-based wallets, they are building addresses that already have staking keys associated with them. So this is probably the address length right here that people are most comfortable or most familiar with. But again, these shorter ones are just without staking.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, thanks.
Chris, you got a question?
No, I actually had the same question. That's all.
So the two people who shared these, I think Jaime was one, somebody else. You guys will just have the extra challenge. You'll get one of these tokens to an address on the command line, and then just build a transaction to send the token to yourself. And here, just so I don't have to keep switching windows. Some draft transactions. So I already have a protocol.json file here. I got this by running Cardano CLI query protocol params. And so you can, if you're not aware of that step yet, that's in the documentation. And I just want to set a few more variables for myself.
James.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, a small thing I noticed again for the protocol.json. I realized when we did the first 101 modules, all this stuff, like while building the transactions, we didn't use protocol.json. So even for the new module for minting tokens, I tried without using the protocol.json, and it worked for the one with when we used Cardano CLI. But it didn't work when we're using the Plutus script. It needs the protocol.json file. So that's something I noticed. So what could be the reason?
I was wondering about that too. I've recognized that it doesn't always seem to be required, and I haven't spent the time on that. But that would make sense. Why? All right. First of all, build build is a newer function. There used to be, well, there still is one called build raw as well, where you have to do even more of just more of the building steps, like fee calculation is not automated. And so I think that when build came out, it no longer was always required to include the protocol params. But when are they required and when are they optional? You see these in the documentation, you can see right here, round parentheses mean that something is required. You have to specify mainnet versus testnet. You have to specify at least one TX in. But
Okay, it's a square bracket in this case. Yeah, so it's
right,
not
I see
required.
these are, we got square brackets, so that means it's optional. You could use a Genesis file or a protocol params file. But right, when I believe, like, that would make sense to me. I'd like to test that myself, right? Can I go without it just for a simple transaction? But then for a Plutus transaction, I have to use it. Let's just try this right now. So up here, let's just make a really simple version of a transaction first. And let's get rid of all these extra outputs here. I'm just going to take one TX in and create, for now, well, let's just do a simple TX out. Right, if I want to just do the simplest possible, send a transaction to myself, let's leave the parameters and the metadata out. We'll just call this test TX. And then I need one more thing here. I'm just back in this folder to stay organized, but I'm going to try to build this without the protocol params.
Before you actually execute it, can I ask one thing?
Yep.
Yeah, so can you show that small yes this thing? In this TXN, you are actually passing this particular UTXO.
Yeah.
How do
I got to replace that.
so
Sorry.
in transaction in that UTXO will be different?
Yeah, no, I didn't replace that UTXO yet. Let me replace that here. this
No,
UTXO.
like I mean to say, from where are you? Yes.
Yeah. I just grabbed this off screen, but here, let me query this address as well, just so we can see this here. Sorry, I have two different sessions going. And then let's do this one. So I'd like to use this one right here. It's got 100 ADA in it. And I should be able to just split that. Let's call this TX in 1. And I'll use index 1 after that hash. And then here, let's just use a variable right here. So that's an easier template to use later. And
Why are you actually placing that hash one over there at the last?
I'm using hash 1 because I want this particular UTXO, the one that has 100 ADA in it. And so notice that we have 4 of the same TX hash, but each has a different index. And that's
So
what goes here.
that was a bit confusing to me. So what we're seeing there is the transaction hash on the left side, and it's each of those numbers is a UTXO.
Yeah, a UTXO is fully represented by the combination of the hash of the transaction that it came from and the array index, essentially, right? The index of this particular output.
Of the outputs. Okay.
And what's cool, we're going to be able to see this to an even greater extent if I build a transaction that has 30 outputs, because everybody is going to get a UTXO that has the same hash, but everybody's going to have a different index for that.
Could you say again, sorry?
Yeah, when I build this transaction in just a few minutes, this transaction right here, all of these different addresses are going to get their own output. And every one of those outputs is going to have the same TX hash with its own unique index, right? So we'll all have a UTXO in our wallets that has the same hash on it, but each of us will only have one of those indexes.
Okay. And about, sorry, go on.
No, sorry. So basically, in a wallet, they actually store the transaction hash and that array UTXO. That's it. So that's how they actually store UTXO in a particular wallet, and that's how they actually track how many UTXO they have in a wallet.
That's right. And so a UTXO is a thing, right? It's a noun. And a transaction is a verb. It's a thing that happened. And so this TX hash describes the action, the transaction. And then what was the result of that action? A bunch of things, each of which have an index.
So because we're looking on your screen to query UTXO testnet address sender, you're looking, you ordered Cardano CLI to show you something keying off of the sender address.
Yeah. Show me all of the UTXOs held at this address.
So what that means, the fact that you have the same TX transaction ID, is that you included 4 outputs to that wallet.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
5. Yeah. 5.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I spent number 3. I think I spent that yesterday.
Okay.
So James, I did have a question, and I'm pretty sure you went over this, but I'm just trying to absorb it 100%. When you're creating and building a transaction, and say you're consuming a UTXO that has 15 of those tokens, and in your TX outs, you're accounting for 10 of them. does the change address, can it handle those 5 extra, or do you need to, add up to that total 15?
It can't yet, and so you have to do the arithmetic perfectly for any native assets, and then change the change address tag can just handle Lovelace.
Gotcha. Okay.
But let's try to make that error happen. Yeah, this is, if you've seen me say this in the videos, I really mean it. And let's try to build some bad transactions right now. And this is the beauty of transaction building, is we're not signing and submitting anything until we're happy. And often something I like to do is I like to get a transaction working, but then look at some of the different ways I can break it before I sign and submit it. So let's do this.
Sorry.
Oh, Krish, go ahead, of course.
No, it's just a question. This is Lucas. So if you when you're building it and you're validating it, I noticed that if I mess up, it's not going to build it. But my question is, since you went through that validation, once you actually submit it, you're pretty confident it's going to go through as long as the servers handle it, right?
That's right. That's right. Right. So that the build step is 1 guard. You can only build a valid transaction in the first place. Then even once you build it, you have to sign it with the right keys. And if you fail to sign with the right ones, right, that's another step where the transaction can fail. And then only once it's built properly and signed correctly can you even try to submit it. Now, there are still things that a bad actor could do or an incompetent actor could do, and that's why collateral exists. Just to make sure that if somebody tries to send a transaction that for some other reason is going to fail after succeeding on build and sign, that collateral will be taken by the network. But I actually I don't have a good example yet to even demonstrate that. If anybody here can build a transaction that burns their collateral, I would love to see that.
Like what sort, like transferring some amount of header? Like yesterday only I did such type of transaction.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
No, like I wanted to ask one more thing into this, like before here, I wanted to ask.
Mhm.
So here I can see that you have a transaction hash, and for that transaction UTXO, you have 5 outputs, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 3 you
Yeah.
have actually spent, and 4, right? So you have 5 UTXO. Now the point being is that if after a transaction, if all these UTXOs were being transferred into your wallet only, why have so why is so why are 5 UTXO actually created? Why only not 1 UTXO is created? So it should like it should be like the scenario which you're actually trying to explain over there in the above case, like you are transferring some ADA into our account. Over there, this actually makes sense. Like you have a transaction output and you have like I have then UTXO like transaction hash 1, like I get it, transaction hash 2, that other person gains it, like transaction hash 3, the other person gains it. Why will a wallet have many UTXOs of same transaction? Like, how does this make sense?
It's such an important question. The only reason this happened is because I did it on purpose in a lesson in module 102. I did this because I want you to see that it's possible. Now, will this ever be necessary? Actually, yeah, there is one case where you do have to send some ADA to yourself, and that's to make sure that your wallet has a collateral UTXO, right? And because you can't interact with Plutus scripts unless you have collateral. There's probably some other reasons that people could think of as well. But yeah, this doesn't happen naturally. This happened because I wanted it to, and I built a transaction that just had a whole bunch of outputs to myself.
Like, how did you actually made this transaction? Like, even if I do an account to account, like if I transfer it to my own account, like how will that transaction, and in that case only it will generate just one transaction hash and just one transaction output, why will it actually generate 5? Like, how is it generated?
So let me get this. This is in the course, Krish. I made a video about this. And
Oh,
the key thing, just to give you the short version, here's what I did. I built a transaction. I can send TX outs to anybody. And what I chose to do, just for demo purposes, okay, I made a bunch of copies of this line, right? I could send as many TX outs as I want to whoever I want, including myself. And then I can change the numbers for each of those. And this is how you would achieve this outcome. And in the chat, another great reason. Yeah, exactly. Mix, I saw your hand up. Is that what you were going to say?
I just wanted to add that this is the reason that in Cardano we can have concurrency with multiple UTXO. That's a advantage that you can do several things. But the drawback is if you have several UTXO in your wallet, I mean, not several, very large amount of UTXO, a small UTXO, it will be harder for a wallet to sync with the network, or for some of the libraries to find the UTXO. For example, they are looking for an NFT. That coin selection or algorithm find that might take a long time, but a concurrency happen with this, with a small UTXO. If you want that,
Right.
Yeah, and we also have the thing about the multiple addresses, right? Because here we're just focusing on one address, and one wallet can have several addresses, which took me a while to learn, but we're not doing those cases for now, are we?
Cardano CLI, we don't have to deal with the multiple addresses.
Okay.
And the good news is, as a developer, a lot of that is taken care of, right? When we get to the front end, you'll see that, okay, wallets might create multiple addresses and there's functions for dealing with that. And yeah, this is like getting change, right? You can accept, I can say the UTXO size is wherever I want. I got 1,000 ADA. I can split that up however I'd like.
And James, to address Krish's question, if you look at James' screen, there are two UTXOs that do contain 10 and 15 and 20. Actually, there's 4, yeah, that contain multiple of those tokens. So you can see that it is possible to have one UTXO with multiple tokens. And when he originally minted them, there was 150, right, James?
That's right. That's right. And the rest are still just sitting in my Game Changer wallet, which, by the way, we could query that using Cardano CLI as well. But hold on, I can't stand the suspense. I've been waiting to press enter here just to find out if this basic transaction will build without protocol params. Let's just find out. Okay, so it does. Okay, so there you go. We don't need protocol params there. What about, let's add one thing to this. What if I wanted some metadata on this transaction? And I'm going to add this metadata in just a minute. There's actually, I created this already. Message.json. Here's a key and a value. We'll talk about this a little bit more today, but also this is a focus of module 203 coming soon. But let me just see, just out of curiosity, do I need protocol params to include metadata? Does not balance. Oh, because I've changed this number here when I was talking here. You see this error? This transaction does not balance. I tried to send more ADA than I was consuming in this UTXO. Let me just fix that. change this.
And you can have several TX ins as well, no?
Yes, yeah, I could add as many ins and as many outs. Well, it's not infinite, but let's try this one. Okay, yeah, so 1 in, 2 outs. There's actually going to be 3 outs because the third one is the change. My question is just, can I add metadata without protocol params? Yeah, that's fine too. So next question, let's try to build this big old transaction right here. And let's do that without protocol params and see if that works. And these TXNs, 51F, BA00, and AEC8. So I didn't send this transaction yet, so this UTXO didn't get consumed, right? I can still use it. What I need, and let me replace these with variables. I think I have to send exactly 30 of these tokens out right now. And so as you can see, I've got 20 of them in this UTXO, 10 over here, and 15 more. Let me use the 20 and the 15 just to show you this, okay? So I'm going to use this as one of my TXNs. TXN1, we'll call it. And that's at #0. TXN2 is going to be this one that has 15 of the course tokens. That's also at index 0. And then because I'm sending 30 outputs and each one also has 2 ADA in it, I'm going to need more than 60 ADA to send all of this. So now I'll use this UTXO again, and I'll actually spend it. This has 100 ADA in it. That'll be enough. So we'll call that one number 3. And that's at index 1. Any questions about why I'm choosing these 3 UTXOs as inputs?
I'm sorry, I'm a bit curious just about what you're doing there with the arguments, the TXNs. You're in the command prompt, yeah?
Yeah.
And then you're just saying TXN3 equals that string.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like like assigning things to path or to the cache path or something. Okay.
Doing things by hand in Bash is a great way to start thinking in pseudocode. Right? If you see variables being used here, if you see repetition here, well, cool. These are now things we can automate.
Yeah, and it helps you to build things like mnemonically. So you literally doing the query TXO before, you select those things, you assign names to them, and it's visual in your script or in your terminal what you're doing with those variables, and you can abstract from them. So it's really great.
Thanks, man. And yeah, I appreciate that. I really hope that this makes it feel a lot more understandable when we start building transactions in the front end. We're going to automate all of this, right? I just want people to have a clear picture of what the heck is getting automated, because it's going to make it easier to decide what pieces to put together. It's going to make it easier to troubleshoot when errors happen.
Yeah, so you could, for example, have a template command like maybe you do on the building it, and now you can paste in the build command and just fine tune the identifiers in it. Yeah.
Let me show you something while we're here on that note. Okay. Just one example of this. Sorry. I want. So I use a simple script that automates these steps just in Bash to mint access tokens for the bounty system. Okay. So just by running this script, we export the node socket path so we can get to that. We query the tip and we grab the protocol parameters for mainnet because just in case we haven't. Then we have a sender address and the key for the sender, the contributor's address, who's going to get an access token, and then their name, right? We can
Those
just
are
put their name
arguments,
on.
the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, these are command line arguments.
Okay.
And then we say, okay, query the address that was put in as argument number 1. This actually prints the list of UTXOs just like we see down here. So then I copy and paste at this prompt, right? It says, okay, which TX in? For this step, I still just choose the one I want by hand and paste it in. Uses that to mint a token name and to send it to the address. Following, and then, right, we can just automate this whole thing, build a transaction with this and this and this, etc. Right, so this is an intermediate level of automation right here.
Yeah, I was just thinking, jumping ahead a bit, like a bit of a leap, but when we're actually in an application with the front end and client side and all that, is this what we're going to have to do? Does it go all the way back to building something like if you were going to send it to create CLI from React or something?
You don't have to if you're interacting with a browser-based wallet, because those wallets are going to expose a lot of the functions that you're going to need to build transactions with the serialization libraries. However, there are still cases where, yeah, you might want a backend service building some other sort of transaction.
And for that, it's going to go through the CLI.
It's one option, right? You can build. There's already native libraries that don't rely on Cardano CLI directly. This is just a program written in Rust, but you can write programs that do all of the similar functions in other languages.
Okay, thanks.
So what I'm going to do right here is just take these 3 variables, right? I think they might match, right? 51F. I don't actually need to change this.
One thing.
Go ahead, Chris.
So over there, you actually mentioned about that you were connecting to the stake pool, right? You actually are running a Cardano stake pool in your not a stake pool, that particular node in your particular browser. If we are not running a node, is there any sort of an API service that we can use over here?
Yes. Yes.
What API services? Can you actually disclose some of them? Because I think I cannot run any a node on my PC right now.
Yeah. There is a submit API, and let's get into the details of how that works soon. That's not something I can start to cover today.
No. After this thing, I
Yeah.
just wanted to get to know that thing. Is that
Yep.
possible or not?
Yep. Because, and so look at this right here, okay? This, actually, obviously I need to be connected to the network to submit a transaction. This signing step often happens on an offline machine, okay? For anything that has to do with any amount of ADA, more than like 100 ADA or so, you don't want to keep your signing keys on a computer that's connected to the internet. So what you can do is, for this building step, you do need to be connected to either your own node or an endpoint that is aware of what each of these UTXOs represents, right? But what I'm curious about is, could I, now that I have those hashes, is value embedded in them? Like, could I run this command right here if I turned off the internet? I've actually never tried that. I know I must have internet access to submit or use a submit API. I know I do not need internet access for sign, and I'm not sure about build.
Yesterday, I experimented with the build yesterday while my node was off sync, and it just wasn't gonna work because if actually the UTXO that I was trying to use was still not in my node. So I was able to submit a transaction that used a known UTXO, and then it went live. It happened on testnet, but I didn't get it synced to mine, so I wasn't able to build off of anything from there on.
Okay, that I'm so curious. I want to play with that, but it sounds like, Lucas, from your experience, to use the transaction build function, we
It
do
needs to be
have to be
local.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
It sounds like it's possible you can build it right without it being online, as long as the DB has synced. So as long as
Yeah.
it can reach that UTXO.
We need
Is
to
that-
go. We need to go look at what this is referencing right here. Yeah. How are those being pulled in?
So Curtis, what you're saying is the node, if the node is synced and it's on my database, but it's not online, and the node is not running, you think it's still going to query the ledger for that?
That's what I'm thinking, right? Because it's really just querying your local database, and if your local database cannot find that UTXO
Yeah.
or that transaction hash, then it
So
may not work.
can we go over a bit what the ledger is? Because I keep seeing logs about it, but I'm not sure, because I know when it replays all the UTXOs and all the
Yes.
blocks, all the tips, when it finalizes doing the catch up, it then starts taking snapshots of a ledger. Is the ledger just a list of UTXOs and ignoring all the spent ones?
Very good. Okay, so that question, distinguishing between what's on the ledger and what's somewhere else, that's actually the main reason why I want to show you this right now. So
Okay.
let me build this transaction, get this out the door, and then let's look at this transaction so we can see, hey, what parts of that are on the ledger and what parts of that are somewhere else. For example, like DB sync. Okay. I think this is an easier thing to see when you have an example in mind. A tiny bit of housekeeping. I need a few more of these, 27, 28, 29. Okay, so just like I can set inputs as variables, I can set the receiving addresses that each of these outputs is going to as a variable. And all I'm going to do right here is take this whole list, copy it, and paste all of that in the terminal. So now if I say echo, oh, it looks, did not all get pasted in. That's funny. Looks like I hit a limit. So if I say echo, but if I say number 13, oh, looks like it got it. It just didn't report it all. All right, good enough. All right. Now, I got my inputs. I got the output addresses. The value, which is everything inside these quotation marks, going out to each of these addresses is the same. 2 ADA and 1 PPBL summer. Oh wait, that is the wrong one. I did that yesterday. I noticed this was wrong because this hex string is too short to be PPBL summer 2022. Although, you know what I'm going to do? Let's build this anyway. And let's look at this error. All right. So now all those variables are set. I should be able to try this transaction. And what I see is that the non-ADA assets are unbalanced. I'm trying to send a whole bunch of these A10 AA tokens, but I have negative 29 of them is the balance of this transaction. Plus, by the way, I have plus 35 too many of the actual token I'm trying to send, because these were part of the inputs, but they're not being sent anywhere. So here I see a plus 35 and a negative 29. I need to zero out both of those in order for this transaction to work. So let's replace the policy ID and token name with the right one. And I just grabbed this yesterday before I realized that it wasn't the one I was looking for. All right, that should be better. Now this is still going to fail. Can anybody think about why?
I just did one part of the balance.
Let me say it again.
Yeah, you need to balance two things. Now you've balanced one only, right?
Right. There's now going to be 0 of those tokens I didn't want to deal with. That's good. But I'm only sending out, what, 29 of these PBL course tokens, and I'm inputting 35 of them. So I should see that there's a plus 6 here out of balance when I try to build this transaction.
I thought it would go to the change address.
Okay. And you see, and they don't go to the change address. This is right. This takes us back to Curtis's question from before. Can change address handle native assets? As you can see right here, it cannot. So what do I have to do?
Add a new TX out that contains 6 to the sender address.
Let's send the other 6 back to the sender. And because I know I'm going to want to use these again, I'm just going to throw an extra 0 on here and add 20 ADA and 6 of these. And that way I might not need an additional transaction later on when I try to send these out. All right, so that's the kind of future UTXO management that some wallets will try to do. All right, this one still doesn't have protocol parameters attached to it. I think it's going to work.
Did everybody understand James' last comment on why he did 20 ADA?
I'm not sure what, I wasn't thinking of what's coming in, what the inputs are in terms of ADA.
Yeah, send them again if you want to know.
This one had 100. This TXN3 had 100 ADA in it, so I should be good. I'm going to need 58 plus 20 gets me to 78. Each of these has a little bit less than 2. So the total input's a little bit more than 103 ADA. The total output is 78 plus a fee ADA. And so what's that going to leave us with? There's still going to be another 25 or so in another UTXO that's output from here that goes to the change address.
Yeah.
But let's check that this builds first. Okay, I'll pause there.
So in the previous case, so the left hand side was like, actually the input side was less as compared to the output. So that's why it is filled.
Right.
So this thing is actually checked by the transaction thing, or where is this actually check condition done while actually executing into the bash condition, or where is it?
This is actually at the ledger level, at the Cardano protocol level. a transaction can only be valid if every asset is perfectly balanced. Now,
And in the previous case, we didn't lose any, so something like in gas fears, something like that.
we lose nothing. This is right, going back to that question from yesterday, right? There is zero cost to building bad transactions. It's absolutely free just to see, hey, could I build this or that transaction?
Especially because you're processing it locally.
Right? This is just a file. And so now I have this, what's this one called? Send tokens with message.raw. I have a file here that I could just save for later. Now, I would still have to use it while it's valid. If one of these input UTXOs gets spent, this is no longer a valid transaction. Okay. But right now, it's just a piece of data. And if I was working on mainnet and these were like NFTs that were worth money or something, I would want to sign this transaction on an offline machine. And here's how that works. I could take this file right here. I can put it on a secure external drive. I could bring that drive over to an offline computer that has my S-key files on it. I could then run this step right here, signing the raw file and outputting a signed file with my sender keys that are on, this is what cold storage means, right? These are on a computer that's not connected to the internet. And then I take that signed transaction, I bring it back to the networked computer where the node is running, and now I submit it to the network. Mix, what do you think? Hey, Matthias.
I just wanted to point out two things. One thing about the fee. If you guys notice, the fee of that transaction, because it's bigger, is higher than the last transaction was James building. So that's another drawback. But if we compare to another blockchain, for example, Ethereum, that's very reasonable and very cost efficient, because instead of having 30 different and distinguished transactions, you have one transaction. But you need to remember that if your transaction is getting bigger, you have to pay extra fee. So you can, that's a thing. And the second thing, your transaction can fail and collateral can be spent, because when you even sign the transaction, that's become a CBOR, and the CBOR, if you see it, it's a series of number. Let's say you are submitting that, but at the middle of that submission, network get disconnected or something happens. So a corrupted transaction will send to the node. That can cause the collateral be spent, because a partial of that transaction didn't send by you. So that's a case. Also, a bad actor can change the, because that's a CBOR, can also add some arbitrary data in that, and that's another example of making a bad transaction. And when this reach the node, a node or block producer have very restricted set of rules that check first the time, and they are checking many things, then reach the like signature. So if they see that, they don't even, how can I say, they don't even process your transaction completely. They just take the collateral and say that was the crop transaction.
Roberto.
Is the fees that were related all seeing the transaction in the back end? Is this script
Hey,
difference.
I'm getting really choppy sound from you. Yeah, it's coming in and out pretty dramatically.
Better?
Ooh, maybe try again.
So I was just wondering, in Plutus script, it sort of matters to your fees, what sort of, if you use low level or high level types. So I'm just wondering if this fee is related at all to the way that it's processing pronunciali. That's okay.
In this case, the reason the cost is higher is because there's a lot of outputs, is really the main reason. The metadata adds a tiny bit, but this is still a pretty small fee. This is about double the minimum fee right here. And we're doing, look at how much work we're doing, right? If I sent each of these outputs in a separate transaction for a minimum fee, call it spending 30 times 0.17. Well, now I'm probably talking about 5 ADA in fees to do all this sending. Plutus scripts are going to add more to the fee than this, but you're right, they can be optimized. Okay, so once we start talking about Plutus, we're going to kind of see what the higher end for fees is by creating some inefficient stuff first, and then we can start talking about, okay, how would you build the efficiencies for your DApp? And that's going to be particularly exciting because we have new tools coming out right now, right? This is what the Vassal hard fork in part is all about, is giving us functionality that's going to make it less expensive to interact with Plutus scripts.
Thank you.
Yeah. Krish, what do you think?
So, like from previous two questions, I have a very common question sort of thing. On what factors does this particular transaction fee actually depend? Like the previous transaction that you were building, the amount of input, like the value, it doesn't depend on the like number of UTXOs that we are giving. It depends upon the amount. Because of that amount, was the transaction fee low, or is it because of like the number of UTXOs that are passed into the transaction? It affects that. Like, is it based on the value, or is it based on the number of UTXOs that are passed? On what things does the basically it depends upon the computational part. So computational part depends upon the value or the UTXO part which has been passed.
Very good. It has more to do with the number of UTXOs than the amount of ADA in a UTXO. Okay, so sending 100,000 ADA and sending 2 ADA are going to have the same fee. But if I send, if there are more inputs and more outputs, that increases the cost of the transaction. Adding additional native assets to a UTXO does make that UTXO a tiny bit bigger. And so that raises the fee a little bit, but it's not much. Okay, most of this higher fee right here is just coming from the fact that there are so many outputs.
So you can see it a bit as being computation and storage, not so much the amounts that you're handling. Is that it?
Yeah, what this number is, right? This number of Lovelace is pretty insignificant in calculating the cost of the transaction.
But I should point out, this is for now. After the Vassal hard fork, all UTXO are not equal anymore. Because the datum or the Plutus script will be stored inside the ledger, inside the UTXO. So the UTXO can be, they will have different sizes too. So after Babbage or aka Vassal hard fork, the size of UTXO, which it's defined with data script, that can affect the fees too. But for now, every UTXO are equal.
That's going to be good to see too. All right, I just signed this thing. the inputs to signing, right? I just must have the right keys, got to tell it the network again. I input the raw file, I output a signed transaction file. And now I should be able to submit this transaction. Okay, success. So now I'm going to wait for this to be accepted on chain, and then we're going to be able to go look at the outcomes.
So if you go to your node, you have your node running locally.
Yeah.
You should see it there. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but
Yeah,
I
check
did
it
it
out.
just today. There's an entry there that says there's something in the mempool that you put in the mempool, and then
Here, my
after-
transaction went into the mempool,
yeah,
and here it was removed. You can see what's in the mempool, 1.0 things. What's in the mempool now? 0 things.
because it flowed into the blockchain, into the network. Is that it?
I need to work on, anybody got good metaphors for talking about exactly technically what's happening right here? I'm not happy with mine yet.
I think mempool is your RAM. Is that a storage of the RAM, a space of a RAM that node occupy. So when something comes in the mempool, it is still in your still in your machine, but it will go. I mean, as you see, it's removed. And when it reach another node, first it will go to its mempool, because normally a node has to have some order or principle to, like a order by time normally, for processing the transaction. In future, I don't know, in Vasil or something, you can add extra fee, like I want to pay more fees, so a pool can process your transaction faster. But how this happen inside the mempool?
Yeah.
I do have a question on the mempool, since, because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it can expire from the mempool, meaning like it can almost time out and then get kicked out of the mempools. So what happens to that transaction then?
I don't know, you guys, especially James and Genty, who are running pool, have you tried to do that, or have you noticed that? Because that is a failed transaction, and that means collateral will get spent. But if it is on purpose, like if someone can manipulate mempool by doing that, I don't know.
This is a huge topic, and it was very big for a little while when some big dApps started launching on Cardano, and before some upgrades had happened. What was that, 4, 6, 8 months ago? And nice, Lucas. There's a much bigger story here. I think it would be best to pin it for now, because we would only just give ourselves a bunch of questions. I want to close the loop on this, just to give people some of this background insight. But questions about mempool are a really, really big deal. And when the ledger, when the Cardano protocol was really being taxed to its full capacity a couple months back, this is a critical issue. And it's clear that the Cardano protocol is not neutral. It is possible to give different transactions precedence based on relationships with stake pool operators, okay? And this is, whenever we see the network running at capacity, this is something we have to think about. And there you know, as the value of this network grows, there will be power struggles when it comes to who has access to whose mempool and when. So yeah, absolutely critical topic, and understanding, hey, what mempool does Nami Wallet use? What mempool does Eternal use? What mempool does this DApp or that DApp use? That's something that developers are going to have to be aware of.
But James, can Cardano Foundation, for example, as the authority dictate something like that, I don't know, changing the state of node, or say this node cannot connect to the network because of a violation of something? Is it possible?
We could drop everything and only talk about that question for the next 9 weeks, and we
Yeah.
still wouldn't.
But
and we
just
still
another
wouldn't be
point.
satisfied.
Yeah.
No, this is what we're getting into here, right? That is both a technical and a political question. And as time goes by, there's going to be more money on the line in thinking about the best answers to that question. And these are going to be major debates. Should
Right.
CF have that power?
Yeah, that's around September. That's a hot topic. But I just wanted to suggest to you and to show people to view the transaction, this big transaction, so people can see what's inside that TX body, which will go in.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, let me pull that up. But first, here. Okay, so many layers as always. Let's look at that transaction from a results perspective here on the command line. Then let's look at the transaction file, just so we're familiar with what's inside of that. And then I'd also like to go look at this transaction on Cardano scan, just so we can see what we're seeing there. Okay, so first of all, this is what my address UTXOs looked like before I sent that big transaction. And which ones did I spend? This one, and this one should be gone. And what's going to replace them? Well, check it out. You'll notice that the previous versions, or sorry, the previous UTXOs are gone. And I now have 2 TX hashes that are the same that I didn't have before. I've got the 0 index, and I've got the 30th index. That's the one with those last 6 tokens that I put right on the end of my transaction build. This one, I'm assuming that's the change that's left over. I think so. It doesn't seem like much. Oh, no, it is 24. Yeah, that's what I expected. So the change was about 24 ADA. Then I put 20 ADA and 6 of the tokens here. So where are indexes 1 through 29? Those are in all of your wallets. Anybody who shared an address, you're going to have the same TX hash, but a different index. Lucas just shared his example. He got index number 22, for example. Any questions about what we're looking at here?
Just maybe forcing you to jump ahead, but why do we keep seeing the TX out data none there?
Good. Okay. So whenever we interact with a smart contract address, the UTXO that we lock at a smart contract address must have something called datum attached to it. This wallet is just my personal wallet. It's not a contract address, so none of these UTXOs need to have datum attached to them. I'm not sure why it's necessary to include this indicator that there's no datum, right? But this is what you do see. Anybody know why we must include TX out datum none right here and can't just have it say nothing?
Inside the transaction body, I mean, a formal specification, there is something called data script, which if there is a book, it's kind of old, 2-3 years ago, Laris and with a couple of other people wrote it about Plutus, a smart contract. It's out there. And they are trying to, I mean, they explain and expand that there is something called inside that, this is for the ledger, the transaction, what I'm saying is a ledger, data script. We have ready-made script, data script, and we had in that time native script or simple script, which is another topic, which now we have Plutus script for that. But data script, that's a belong to data script, and the ledger should know about that, which now changed to datum. We see it as a datum.
Matthias, good answer. That makes sense to me too. All right. So 2 more things just to look at for just a moment here. This is the contents of the raw transaction file. Type TX body Babbage. There's no description of it. And then here's the CBOR representation of that raw transaction that I just built. So that's what's inside of these files that Cardano CLI transaction build is creating.
James, I sent a command that you can decode this CBOR.
Oh,
and
view.
see
Yeah, I
everything.
always forget about that one. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. What did I call that thing? Send. Hey, nice. Okay. So this is what has been encoded.
And you can change this, and you can change these
This
numbers, CBOR code. And if you change it, and the node notice that, which it's almost 100% that they will notice that programmatically, so it's not by hand. Your collateral will be spent and your transaction will fail. That's a one case.
This is really helpful. And yeah, let's do a little more looking like this when we have some smaller transactions, but you can see, yeah, just each of our outputs. Excellent. And so all of the information, like all of this information right here, this is more or less represented in each of those UTXO hashes, right? This is the information that we know about a given UTXO.
Which file did you feed into this command? Was it the signed file?
This was the raw one, but signed looks the same. Oh.
I think you need what?
I can't look at the signed one.
The raw,
Okay.
So the raw one is the previous one, not even signed.
Not signed. I can see it, but if I try to do the signed one,
Maybe we need to specify the error.
yeah, maybe. All right. Well, so I have a hard stop in 3 minutes. So that's another really fun thing to explore that we're not going to explore today. I do just want to take a moment to give people this in case you haven't seen it. Just last thing. Now I'm going to take the transaction hash, and we can see this representation of it. Okay. Here are the three inputs. They all came from the same address. They each had different hashes. And here's that idea of a blockchain, right? Each of these inputs references the transaction that it came from before. And if you can go backwards one step like that, you can go all the way back to the genesis of the blockchain. And you can see how every token has ever moved around that's ever been moved on Cardano, just by tracing backwards through UTXOs, okay? The outputs, here they are. The fee that we saw, and then all of these different outputs, each with 2 ADA and one of these tokens. So you'll be able to see those now. All of this is on the ledger, okay? So Lucas, just to close that loop, when you think about the ledger, it's, yeah, what are the UTXOs that we can currently see? But the history of each transaction, that's in DB-Sync. Metadata, for example, I snuck this in there, but we're going to use this next week. It's okay if we didn't fully talk about it yet, okay? There's a little bit of metadata on this transaction. That's not on the ledger. This would be accessible from DB-Sync, and you can query it, for example, with GraphQL. There's a lot more that we can query with GraphQL to look at historical data.
GraphQL aimed at the node or aimed at something like the underlying?
Aimed at DB-Sync, an instance of DB-Sync.
Which is part of the node.
It's not.
Okay.
These are different things.
Okay.
Yeah, so the node is running the ledger, and then an instance of DB-Sync would be running. I mean, DB-Sync, I guess, is a, you would call it a distributed database. You wouldn't call it a blockchain, right? But it is, everybody who's running it is keeping that full copy of it.
Am I running it while I'm running the Cardano node or not?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
And
thanks.
take the amount of time that it takes to get Cardano nodes synced up from 0 and multiply that by what? 10, 20?
Okay.
2 weeks.
It can take weeks to sync Cardano DB.
So it's an indexation of, it's sort of an indexer, is it?
It is.
Okay.
Well, and so now you're seeing, okay, why do services like Dandelion exist? Why do other lighter indexers exist? We start to see the need for all these other tools.
Thank you so much.
Y'all, sorry to have to jump off right now, but thanks for sitting through that demo. I really hope that that gives you something to think about over the weekend and a little picture of where we're going next. Deeper into these tools, you're wrapping your mind around tokens and UTXOs. We'll start playing with those in new ways.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. I'll post this recording
you.
first thing tomorrow.
Thank you. So see you Monday.
See you Monday. Oh yeah, and I'll put up a message tomorrow just to have an informal session on Monday for anybody who wants to explore running Nix and or a node from a virtual, from a cloud Linux machine. We can play with that. We can get better at talking about what the cost would be and think about if there's something we want to do there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Sounds
I'll
good.
put that up. All right. See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yep.
Bye-bye.